Shopify Masters is powered by Shopify, the easiest way to sell online, in person, and anywhere in between. To get an extended 30-day trial, visit shopify.com/masters.
And when you work with artists that are just set on their own vision and they don't understand that they're actually being hired and it's somebody else's vision, it's a challenge.
Hey, my name is Felix. I'm the host of Shopify Masters. Each week, we learn the keys to success from e-commerce experts and entrepreneurs like you. In this episode, you'll learn how to collaborate with artists when creating your products, how to protect yourself when working with freelancers, and how to source products by walking into retail stores. Today I'm joined by Dan and Dave from Art of Play. Art of Play offers curated collection of custom and designer playing cards for magicians, cardists, games, and collectors. And we started in 2013 and based out of San Diego, California. Welcome, Dan and Dave.
Thanks for having us.
It's good to be on the show. Thank you.
Yeah, excited to have you both on. So pretty interesting, audience or niche that you guys are going after. Talk to us about this. How did you choose this industry to start a business in?
Yeah, you would say it's niche, but we're in a huge niche market. Magic and cardistry are two very popular, diverse global art forms. And one of their main tools is playing cards. So they go through a lot of playing cards. And that's ultimately how we got into it. We're magicians turned brand owners, but we've always loved playing cards. I think since we were 12 years old, we've carried a deck with us everywhere we go. But yeah, I don't know if you want to chime in, Dave, and give a little more info.
Yeah, I couldn't have really said it better. I mean, that's sort of how we got started with Art of Play. It was just our love and passion for playing cards. I think in 2008 was the first year we put out our own deck of cards. And that was long before Art of Play. We actually had another website, which we still have, dananddave.com, where we would explore different ideas. We would release playing cards, instructional videos for magicians, apparatus for magicians. And then eventually playing cards sort of took it over. Like we were seeing more and more interest in playing cards. And eventually we're like, hey, we should start a playing card only store. And that kind of planted the seed for Art of Play.
So you both are professionals already in this space. And you decided to start creating your own tools, essentially, right? Your own playing cards. How did that happen? How did you decide that you guys are, of course, the target customer? How did you take that step, that leap towards designing and creating your own cards?
It was, I think, 2006 or 7, and David Blaine, world famous magician, had just put out his own deck of playing cards. And as young teenagers, we were like, this is amazing. We have to get this deck. This is, David Blaine's personal deck. And at that time, we were growing as artists and magicians. We had our own brand. It was very small at that point, but that's ultimately what gave us the idea that, if David Blaine could have a deck, why can't we have one? So from there, we saw an artist that we really loved. We reached out to him. He was a UK artist from the United Kingdom. His name was Cy Scott. We pitched him the idea, and he was into it. And I think about a year later, we released 2 decks. Since we're twins, we released 2 decks and called them Smoke and Mirrors. One was black and one was white. And that's really what started it. And that was back in 2007 or 2008. And today, I can't even count how many decks we've done. Probably close to 100 unique playing cards over the years.
So you found a designer to work with. Did this designer also have experience in the industry, or were they a designer from another industry that you essentially taught how to design for your industry?
Yeah, so we actually discovered Cy on a blog. I couldn't tell you which blog, but we used to follow a lot of design blogs, and his work just really stood out to us. And we went to his website. He had an email address, so we just emailed him. But nowadays, I mean, it's so easy to discover artists that work for freelance. We use Behance.com to discover artists, and a lot of the artists we work with have profiles on Behance. So it's a great resource to go and just type in some keywords that you have brewing for an idea and find the right artist for the job and then start a conversation. And that's really how it works. It's just a casual email that says, look, we have this idea for a deck of cards. We think you'd be perfect for it. And then, if they're into it, they're into it. And it just goes from there.
Mm. Or better yet, Instagram, which is what we use now. We find so many unique artists on Instagram. It's just such a great platform for anyone to post their work, and it just makes it easy and convenient and fun to find new artists out there.
So you guys are not just working with one artist anymore. You're working with multiple artists to release all of these different playing cards?
Absolutely, yeah. We've worked with dozens of artists from all over the world. I mean, the way it works for us is if we see an artist and we're into their style and we're into their art or their work, why not reach out to them? Why not collaborate on something and make something physical and tangible?
Yeah, I think that's a great approach to add new angles, new flavors into your product, because you're essentially selling the same product but very different approaches, right?
Yeah, what's great about playing cards is it really is a blank canvas. There, I mean, you can browse our catalog of hundreds of different designs, and no two are the same. I mean, we have a deck themed after animals, and then we have a deck themed after the Sons of Liberty. We have so many, I can't even think of any right now.
Yeah. Now, how do you, because you're working with so many different designers, so many different artists, how do you, I guess, keep it cohesive, right? I think that's a concern that some entrepreneurs, some brand owners have when they're collaborating with so many different artists, so many people that have different opinions or different approaches to the art. How do you work with them to make sure that everything is aligned with your brand?
Well, one of the great things about playing cards is it really promotes individuality. Like each deck is almost like a book, like a coffee table book. It doesn't have to follow a format. It doesn't necessarily have to fit within our own branding. It can live on its own in its own world with its own aesthetic. And we love that idea. We love this approach and just allowing the artist to express their own ideas in the cards and themselves and not hold them back to any kind of limitation. So that's why our cards, I would say, are some of the most unique from deck to deck. I mean, we have, cards spanning a wide range of styles from vintage to Western to modern to classy. It all depends on the artist and the idea we have.
Mm-hmm. Now, what's the best way to work with artists in your experience? Like, what kind of tips do you have to offer for people that out there that have a brand that maybe they're the sole voice and visionary of the brand, but now they want to consider collaborating with other artists? Like, what kind of tips do you have to offer?
I think it's very clear. I mean, we work with artists from, like I said, all over the world. So it's very much through email or through Skype. There's very little direct contact with the artist just because it's not possible. It's very impractical. But I think having a clear vision and a clear idea, whether it's your idea or the artist's, and sticking to it, because as these projects go on for months, sometimes over a year, the direction can totally change and it just never ends. It's like, oh, we could go this way or we can go that way. We can change that. We can change this. So I think having a clear concept from the start and just going with it is what we've learned over the years, because there's just so many options. There's so many ways you could swing this, The
other thing too is when you're looking for artists, like Dan said, it's important to have a vision, because every artist has their own style they specialize in. And if you're looking through an artist's portfolio and you want something different than what they've represented themselves as and what they've shown in their portfolio, it's going to be a challenge and you likely won't be able to get that. So it's important that you hire an artist whose style is what you're going for. I mean, you get what you get. So just try to find the artist who has the style in line with your own vision And then I think it will be a success.
Yeah, and I think that's why we've worked with just so many different artists over the years, just because, every idea, every concept, every theme kind of requires a different style. And, if there's an artist out there that is the best there is at that particular style, then use them.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that, when people are going out there looking for freelancers, for contractors, for design work, they sometimes gauge it based on things like the budget or maybe based on how well they work with the artist or the freelancer, but they don't think about, is this artist already creating in the style that I want? It's much harder to kind of force that aspect rather than work around the budget or work around how well you communicate with them. So now when you do find artists that you like their style, how much input do you typically give yourselves, or do you just kind of let them run with it with the initial designs?
We have an arrangement with the artists to make revisions, to give feedback. We prefer to have a role of art director. So, it is our vision, it is our product. And I think we do understand, the market and what we're trying to achieve. So it's important we have that relationship with the artists. And it's also extremely important that they know that that's the relationship you want up front. We've worked with artists many, many, many times where it wasn't clear that that's the position and that's the role we wanted to play in the process. And when you work with artists that are just set on their own vision and they don't understand that they're actually being hired and it's somebody else's vision, it's a challenge. I mean, it's not easy to work with every artist. So it's important to be clear up front where you stand and what you want and how the relationship is going to work. But once that's set in stone, like once you have an agreement like that, it's so much fun because then you can really bounce ideas off one another and really just jazz with different approaches. It actually frees up a lot of the creativity, knowing, I don't want to say knowing who's in charge, but in a way, knowing who's in charge and who makes the final call allows for some creativity. They're no longer afraid to show you something because who knows, it could work out for the better.
Yeah, that's a great point. But how do you know that that particular artist will be amenable or flexible in that way where they will, take direction from you?
We always ask for it up front, and then it's just in our experience with working with certain artists, we might not work with them again. That's just how it is. And then some are absolutely great, and we've used them many times. So.
Yeah, there's really no way of knowing up front. You just got to have great communication, interview the guy. You got to like him. You got to like their work. But to be honest, I would say there's a dozen or so projects of ours that, didn't make it to the finish line, so to speak, just because of, the relationship with the artist wasn't what we wanted.
Now, how do you back out of those situations when you do find that you're running into a brick wall and they're difficult to work with, which I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs will run into, whether they be artists or any other kind of freelancer? You're working with someone that you're just having a very difficult, a lot of friction kind of work relationship with them. How do you back out of that in the best way possible?
Well, we always try to be as tactful as we can and, sympathetic. However, it is important, I would say, to have that conversation up front. And in a lot of the contracts we have with artists, there's a kill fee. So, for example, say after the first or maybe the second round, usually our cards are completed in stages. We don't just say, hey, tackle everything and then show us the designs. We like to see the work in progress. So, say the second round comes around and, we're just not happy with the direction it's going. Our direction we don't feel is being communicated or, it's just not coming off in the way we imagined, then that's the good point to back out and say, hey, we're going to go in a different direction with this. And thank you. We've done that a couple times. Sometimes we'll just give them free rein and say, hey, maybe you're right, go for it. And it actually turns out sometimes. So it really depends on the project, the scope of the project. If it's a big budget, obviously, we have to be more careful. But if it's a smaller project, then it's really not at a loss if, they just complete it and we don't like it and we don't end up using it. And we have a lot of artwork that's never been shown. So
Now, when you are going through this process of finding an artist, finding different styles that are catching your eye, how do you decide that, this is a style that we want to turn into a card?
we've been looking through like graphic design books and design blogs for years. And I like to think we have a trained eye and a good sense of design. I don't know if that's true. I think we just have an opinion. But if we both really like something, I think it says a lot. Sometimes I like something and Dan's like, meh, I don't know what you see in that. And, I think what's really beneficial in our relationship, our partnership, and I'm talking about Dan and I, is we have this unique privilege where we can both work together on something. And then when we share a similar idea, it's usually a sign that we're going in the right direction. It's usually a sign that we're both going to be energized and enthusiastic and excited about the project. And that helps drive the overall vision.
And I think the fact that, we use playing cards on a daily basis as magicians, as sleight-of-hand artists, like, we've seen more designs and shuffled more cards than anyone on the planet. I can guarantee you that. And I think that's important to really understand and know and love, what it is you're creating. In this case, it's playing cards for us. Like, so with that said, it's very different to see a piece of art or a design on a wall and it versus shrunk down to a tiny 3.5 by 2.5 piece of paper, So with that, we really know what works on a small scale, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Do you look for the validation elsewhere outside of, obviously you two, like you're saying, you two are the perfect kind of filters for what's good and what's not, because you are the target customer and you've seen so many different designs, you know the business behind it. Do you also look elsewhere outside of yourselves to validate whether a particular design is going to sell well or not?
Oh, absolutely. Like all the time, we are straight up stumped. Like Kickstarter is very popular in the playing card community. There's new decks released on Kickstarter all the time. Some of them, we scratch our heads and be like, how is this funded? How is this so successful? I mean, yeah, it's just personal taste, I guess, at the end of the day. We like to think we have good taste, but sometimes people don't like it.
There's a team, like we have a team of 7, and out of those, our older brother is one of them. We're always asking him for his opinion. We have a couple of friends who I think have a really good sense of design. So we'll ask them. We ask one of our team members, Adam, what he thinks. So we have like our go-to people that we, use to sort of validate our direction and our vision. But at the core of it, if it's not something we're really excited about, like it doesn't matter what anyone else says. It's like, we're going to do it or we're not going to do it. It's really, it has to be up to us.
And so even if you do see a particular design or style that is very popular and that it's going to sell, but the both of you just aren't excited by it, you aren't into that particular style, you won't release it.
No. And I think that's an important distinction. When you fall, that's a trap in my opinion. Like when you start doing that, you're going to lose your passion. You're going to, you might be able to write it out for a long time and you might have some great success, but looking back, there won't be any purpose to it. Like there's a lot of purpose in what we do and a lot of passion drives what we do. So we never want to take on a project for the sole sake of appealing to the masses. Like that's not at all what we're into. And that's why I think our cards don't follow any particular template. They don't look the same from one to the other. I mean, you probably wouldn't know it's an art of play deck looking at it on the shelf in a store because it's so different from the other one. But it allows us to pursue our own vision and to be excited about it. So I think it works in that benefit.
Right, that makes sense. Now, when you do have a new, talk us through the timeline. Let's say that you find artists. How long does it typically take for them to create a design? I guess the final version that's ready to go to print.
It really depends on the artist and the scope of the project. We've had projects go on for 2 years, and that's fine. It's been fun working on those projects. They end up to be truly great projects that we really love. We've had artists deliver complete designs in a couple of months. So it really depends on the scope and what we're looking for. But after we receive the artwork and it's ready to go, basically it's about an 8-week turnaround until we see a physical deck of playing cards. And our process is kind of involved. You would probably never imagine this, but there's a lot of steps, at least for us, to do it with the quality we uphold to get a finished deck of cards. We start by printing just the playing cards through the United States Playing Card Company. They're based in Kentucky. In our opinion, they're the best there is at printing playing cards. They've been doing it for over 130 years. Just the quality is better than anything we've seen. For the boxes we use, for the packaging, I should say, we use a local letterpress printer in San Diego, Globe Street Press, who does phenomenal work. This allows us the creative freedom to really do whatever we want, like all the printing tricks, embossing, foil stamping, letterpress, debossing, like custom papers, die cutting. Like, it's crazy what we're able to do. And I think that's what really sets us apart from the rest of the playing card community. From there, and then everything. So we get the cards from the U.S. Playing Card Company, boxes from local letterpress. Then everything has to be hand assembled or packaged and cello wrapped before it's delivered to us. So it is a lot of steps for just a single deck of playing cards.
Did you have experience in this industry before? How did you know how to piece together this entire supply chain?
It's just something that we learned over the years. We've been doing this since 2008, and I think it took us until 2013 to figure it out.
What kind of mistakes can you share that you've made along the way during this discovery process?
I don't know if I would call them mistakes, lessons maybe.
Sure.
Just because if it's not a mistake if you don't know, and we just didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
We sort of, we're always wanting to improve, and our next project is always our best project. And with that comes, research and finding better ways to do what we've done in the past. And that's ultimately what led us to using this local letterpress instead of having, a factory print our boxes. That's what had us hand assemble all the decks, which is just a better way to do it. In our opinion, the quality turns out better. So it has just been a learning process over the years.
One of the mistakes I remember early on was opting. We were on a tight deadline. We wanted to release a deck, I think, for the holidays, and we had normally opted to receive a printed proof. However, we were on such a tight deadline that we said, no, we don't need the printed proof. We trust it look okay. And that was a huge lesson. We will never again print a deck of cards without receiving a physical printed proof, because the colors are never the same as what you see on your computer, or even you see like in a Pantone color book. Like, the paper has a lot to do with the end result. So for this particular deck, the colors came out just terrible.
Yeah, that was a sad day.
We got like 2,500 decks. And I mean, granted, nobody knew they weren't exactly what we wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think anyone questioned the color was off. But for us, it was not at all what we wanted. And it was always like a dissatisfaction. And it was a huge lesson to, don't rush things like this. Your products are the most important thing you have. I mean, it's everything. It's why you have customers. So, spend the time on them and make sure they are what you're intending them to be.
Now, you have a pretty large catalog now of different playing cards. How often are you releasing new products these days?
Playing cards, we On average, I would say we release a new deck every month. Last year was a bit more ambitious. I think we had about 16 new decks that we produced that year. We've toned it back a little bit this year, but we try to come out with something new every month. And then just last year, we started integrating games and puzzles and unique curiosities into our catalog, which has been a whole different learning curve for us. And it's so fun sourcing all these unique items. Like just last month, we traveled through Japan for 2 weeks just with the sole purpose of sourcing cool stuff to bring back to our shop. It was a lot of fun.
Now, when you are releasing once a month, that's a pretty, even though these are decks, even though you have the experience of releasing them, it's still a pretty high frequency and a ton of work to squeeze into a new release every month. What's your process behind this? Like, what is the launch process for a new deck?
It depends. Certain decks get more hyped up than others.
As soon as we get the cards, we'll send them to our photographer. Our photographer lives on the other side of the country, on the East Coast. So he's taking the photos. As he's taking the photos, we're working on the copy. We're adding the product to the website. We're starting to tease the cards on Instagram. And then, we'll usually announce a release date and, hype it up until that day. And then when that comes, everything's hopefully ready to go. So many times, though, we have released a deck of cards when we're still expecting them to arrive, which is a little scary. But, those are days like Black Friday or, where you have to release the product. There's like no question, like whether you have the product or not, if it's going to be there in a couple of days, you just have to do what you have to do.
What's the process to decide or to gauge how many units you should order?
Honestly, it's a hunch. Dave and I decide like right before the order. I don't know. It's a good question.
Do you have photos and everything, or are you hyping it up prior to placing that first order? Like, do you have an idea of how people are responding to it?
Some decks we release as limited releases. Like, we're going to print a certain amount, we're going to release it, and then once it sells out, that's it. We're not going to reprint them. Where other decks will live on. So with that, once we decide that determines the quantity we print and whether or not we're going to just continue to reprint it,
Got it. Now, do you ever remove products from your catalog?
We don't. I mean, they sell out. We allow them to sell out, and then we'll opt not to reprint them. Mm-hmm. But I think everything that we've produced is on the website. I don't know if that we've actually removed anything.
Yeah, you can still see it. It's out of stock, but it's still there as like a catalog.
Got it. And do you make, what kind of decision do you make, or how do you make that decision on whether to restock or not? Is it just based on the success of that particular product?
I guess it depends. I mean, how well it sold initially versus how well it sold long term, how well it was received with the community. If there's lots of photos of it from other people on Instagram, is a huge factor. If lots of people love the deck and they're posting photos of it, then yeah, we absolutely want to continue selling that deck because it's like free advertising.
Right, that makes sense.
We did have something interesting happen though. Years ago, we printed a deck of plaid playing cards. They had a plaid back design. They were very simple and vintagey. And when we put them out, they didn't sell. Like nobody wanted them. And Dan and I thought they were the coolest thing. And that was like in 2012 when vintage wasn't overplayed. So we thought they were perfect and nobody wanted them. And it wasn't until like 2016 or 2015 that people started catching on, and we got a lot of exposure on different blogs, and then they all of a sudden started selling like crazy and we had to reprint them. It's just interesting to see sometimes when something works or if it's just a delayed response, or we really have no idea.
Speaking of blogs though, I mean, since we have such a unique item that's very, designery, for lack of a better word. There's so many cool design blogs out there, like Uncrate or Cool Material, Cool Hunting, or Not Caught. You can name 100 of these blogs that are well visited and trafficked. Is that a word? I'm not saying that right. Anyway, because of that, a lot of them post and repost our playing cards because they are so unique and cool, So that's been a huge help in, at least the initial sales of the deck. And that's ultimately what I think sparked everyone's interest in plaids. It was Uncrate, which is arguably one of the biggest men's blogs on the internet, blogged the vintage plaids, and sales just soar through the roof. And they've continued to sell ever since. It's crazy.
Now, the intro, I introduced your company and all the different types of customers that are coming to your store, buying from you. But they're different, right? There's demographics. They all want these playing cards, but there's at some points there's not a whole lot of overlap between the different audience, different types of customers that come your way. How do you reach all of these different types of people that are all into playing cards but might not be using them for the same purpose?
Honestly, we treat them all the same. As sad of an answer as that is, we have cardists and magicians and collectors that continue to buy from us on a regular basis, especially magicians and cardists. They're the guys that buy like a dozen of the same deck at a time because they use them, and since they're paper, they do get old and they need to replace them. Collectors will buy a few of each deck, and that's it. They'll wait until the next one comes out. And then we have just, the layman out there, the novice who just sees a deck and wants one to play with on game night, and they're only buying one deck. They might come back later and buy another deck, but it's typically only one at a time because, let's be honest, if you're not a magician or cardist, you really only need one deck. Maybe not. You need them all, actually. I shouldn't say that.
Yeah, I'm neither of all of these. I'm not your target customer, but just looking at the products makes me want some of these cards just because of the design factor. It looks like a really unique product, and I think it's something that anyone that appreciates any art could certainly get into it, even if you're not into playing cards themselves.
That's been a challenge for us. I mean, this is a great example because we are well aware of your demographic. Like what you just described is a customer that we would love to market to. Like how do we reach you? So that's one of the things we're struggling with. Like we have a grasp on the magicians and the cardists and the collectors, but there are millions of other people out there who might think our products are interesting. So that's been a challenge and will probably always be a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, the style and the design itself is what's attractive to me. Have you, you mentioned that you've branched out into puzzles and games. Have you thought about just essentially blowing these up into prints, or is that an avenue that you're considering going down?
Well, we've thought about it. We even have some prints in our warehouse hanging. It's just another really niche market that we're really not. It's a totally different industry, and mm-hmm. I don't know if it's one that we want to get into. Right now, we're more focused on games and puzzles.
Right. Now, what made the decision, or how did you make the decision to expand the catalog into puzzles and games?
I think it comes from our magic and sleight-of-hand background. We've always been fascinated with mystery and figuring out ways to achieve the impossible. And a puzzle is the perfect example of that. We've always loved puzzles, and there's just so many unique puzzles out there that, aren't really popular. When you say puzzle, you probably think of just a jigsaw puzzle with mm-hmm. a cheesy photo on it, right? That is the total opposite of what I mean by puzzle and what we sell in our shop. We sell really cool puzzle boxes that are handcrafted in Japan and just look amazing on the shelf. And then you pick it up and it actually does something, and it's fun to play with. And when you figure it out, you're just filled with delight and joy. It's a lot of fun.
Now, you mentioned that you source a lot of these products, which is different than your experience, which has been to essentially manufacture your products yourselves. What kind of difficulties or what kind of challenges have you encountered now that you're into this new territory?
Oh, a big challenge is having a great seller and then going to place a reorder and hearing from the manufacturer that it's out of stock or that it's no longer being manufactured or that there's a 4-month waiting period. That happens to us quite a bit, especially because we try and source very unique and exclusive items.
That's really unfortunate.
Yeah, what's your process for that? So you mentioned that you went to Japan recently and just looked for cool products. Is that literally walking into stores and trying to find products?
We literally walked into every store we thought that looked cool. Didn't matter like what they were really selling. For example, we walked into this home design store. In the window, they were showing like tableware and linens and, little home knickknacks. We walk inside and they had a whole corner of Japanese puzzle boxes, probably 40 different puzzle boxes. And the shopkeeper was a huge fan of puzzle boxes and also spoke great English. So it was like we immediately became friends. We told him all about our business. He loved the magic. We showed him some card tricks. We exchanged contact information. We bought a bunch of puzzles from him, of course. But now he is like our guy, our go-to guy for puzzle boxes in Japan. Before, we were going through the manufacturer and the language barrier was causing some delays and we weren't always getting a response right away. But now we have this relationship with this shopkeeper that we have something in common with, and we met him in person. He knows who we are. And it's just been great. We have a huge order on the way for the holidays and we're just stoked. So I think it was hugely beneficial for us to take that trip and make these personal connections.
And then when you walk into a store and you see a product that you have to get into your own store, how do you, obviously, a lot of times the store owner is not the manufacturer. They're probably sourcing from somewhere else. How do you approach them to work out an arrangement where you get to, I guess, their source?
Honestly, for Japan, it was hard, but in the States, if we see something we like, we do it all the time in the States. There's so many unique shops in every major city. And every once in a while, we come across something really unique. We'll just buy it and, do our best job to find it on the internet.
Yeah, I guess you could always do your own research.
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't work out that way. Sometimes there's no box, there's no website listed, there's no manufacturer listed. So it does become a challenge, but there's ways.
Got it. Now, you mentioned earlier that blogs and websites like Uncrate have been a big boon to bring the attention to your business. Is that the biggest driver of traffic to your store, these blogs?
I think so. Like, we try to collaborate with a lot of different sites. We have a really cool video coming out later this month with greatbigstory.com. So that will be a nice push for Art of Play. We just collaborated with a very popular YouTuber with almost 500,000 followers who came. We flew out to San Diego to do a tour of our showroom in San Diego. And that was a huge push. I think from that, we got about 6,000 new Instagram followers, which is insane. So I think for us, our key marketing strategy is just influencers, whether it's on Instagram or YouTube or all these blogs out there. We try to make friends with as many people as possible and sort of, get them to help us get the word out.
A lot of the designers we work with too also have large followings. So that's not a deciding factor whether we work with a designer or not, but it is a huge push. We've done a deck. We've done 2 different decks with DKNG, and they're all over the internet. Their work is blogged everywhere consistently. They're just like at the top of their game. So that was a huge push in our recognition within the graphic illustration poster community.
And also brands, like, we've collaborated with some really cool brands. A couple of years ago, we worked with Bruce Lee, and we worked closely with his daughter, Shannon, to produce the official Bruce Lee deck of playing cards. And it turned out really cool. It was, of course, blogged on all the blogs. And that was a great push and exposure.
Now, how do you collaborate with celebrities like this? How do you get in touch with them? How do you get them to agree?
It's very simple. You just send out some emails.
You just have to ask. I mean, we've been blown away by, it's the greatest feeling when like someone just says yes from a simple email. It's like, that's all it takes. It really puts things into perspective. It always begins with the question, and more often than not, we would consider ourselves very lucky.
Yeah, and honestly, we've gotten a lot of no's, but persistence is key. We've turned those no's maybe 2 years later into yeses, and finally done a project with them. And that's happened a couple of times. We're just, if we love a brand or an artist, we really want to work with them, and why not? We're going to make it happen. Maybe not this year, but eventually.
That was exactly the case with DKNG. We had reached out to them. They were interested in doing a deck of cards. We would follow up every couple months. They were super busy. They always had tons of work in the pipeline. And it wasn't until like 2 years after our initial email that we actually released a deck of cards. So you have to be persistent. Like, even a yes is just, or even a no is just not right now, in my opinion. So I will follow up with people that say no.
Yeah, when you're working with other celebrities or big design studios that will most likely, essentially slow things down, right? Because they have other projects or they have other priorities. How do you kind of keep things moving along and not prevent it from stalling out, essentially?
I think once the project kicks off and officially starts, there is a deadline. It's very important to have a deadline because projects could go on forever. And we try to stick to that deadline. It's rarely met, but it's pretty close.
It's also, one way you can influence this is just your payment structure. Like, you never want to pay upfront for everything. You want there to be
another
monetary incentive for them to finish a project as soon as the contract's been signed. So for our larger projects, we can even break this up into stages. Like, finish round 1, we pay you this. Round 2, we pay you this. Round 3, we pay you this. So there's always a payment at the end when deliverables are sent. And that way, it's in their interest as well to finish the project financially, at least.
Now, influencers are definitely a definitely opportunity, but also a challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs. Finding the right influencers, working with them in a way that actually makes sense to drive the traffic and eventually sales to your store. What's been your approach? How do you identify which influencers to work with? Starting there.
Yeah, I can imagine that being really tough. Like especially if you're in a niche market, like how do you branch out? Like how does your niche fit in line with anyone else? And it really doesn't, but you got to figure out ways to make it fit. Thankfully for us, since we come from the magic background, and puzzles and games being, loosely related, I guess, at least interesting, we work with a lot of popular magicians that have huge followings and cardists. So that's a huge help. And just with Instagram, like it's very easy. I don't want to say easy, but it's easier than it was before Instagram for anyone to have a huge audience and to have an influence within any community. We have friends that have Instagram accounts with millions of followers just because they're persistent on what they post and they have great content. And now they're able to, be influencers and get work because of that.
Now I want to talk a little bit about actually running the business, running the store. What's the day-to-day like? What are your key focuses when you come into work for the day?
It depends. I'm in San Diego and Dave is in Los Angeles. We both live on our computers, so we can technically work wherever. We do have a warehouse and a team of guys that run the logistics and the shipping. Our focus is more on product development, management, what else? Marketing strategies. dealing with manufacturers, dealing with artists, all that stuff, all the fun stuff.
Definitely. So when you are working together, running the store, what kind of tools, what kind of applications do you guys rely on to bring the whole thing together and keep everything organized?
I guess I should say, since this is a Shopify podcast, that, prior to Shopify, we had gone through some other e-commerce platforms, which I don't need to mention. They're terrible. Shopify really is the best. It's a lifesaver. And I'm not just saying that. We have 3 shops all on Shopify, and it just makes everything so simple. In addition to that, our guys in the warehouse use ShipStation, which is an amazing platform that just makes shipping easy. It's click of a button shipping. In terms of other features, I don't know. What kind of info do you want out of this question?
I actually want to, I guess, what ShipStation, you mentioned that. Are there any other apps that you use from the Shopify App Store or even off Shopify that you recommend?
I mean, outside of Shopify, we live in the the Adobe Creative Suite. We're using Photoshop and Illustrator every day, whether it's designing our own designs or tweaking designs or getting things print ready from artists. We use Gmail and G Suite, like Google Pages and Google Sheets are a lifesaver. That's pretty much it for me. I mean, just Adobe and Google are my go-to applications. Yeah,
for newsletters, we use Klaviyo, which is amazing as it feeds right into Shopify, and everything is automated from, the customer. What was that?
I was going to say, I use both. I use MailChimp for another website of ours, and I use Klaviyo for, I guess, all 3 of our Shopify websites. And they're both really good. They have their pros and cons. I would say, though, if anyone is running an e-commerce site, the features in Klaviyo are superior to MailChimp, in my opinion. Just seems to be more seamless, especially with Shopify.
Yeah, this is definitely a common questions I see, or Klaviyo versus MailChimp or some other email provider. What kind of features or tools within Klaviyo do you find particularly useful for e-commerce stores?
We use the abandoned cart feature. That works wonders. It absolutely works, and it's really easy to set up.
Yeah, I would say any of Klaviyo calls them flows or automated emails that come from Shopify, whether it's the order invoice, the tracking number, the submit a review after you purchase an order, the customer win back after they abandon the shopping cart. There's so many automated emails within Shopify that connect to Klaviyo that you can customize and really take advantage of upselling future product in your website and your brand.
And that's pretty much all set up once and automated for you guys.
Yeah.
You set it and forget it. It's really...
Yeah, definitely one of the best ways to build systems for your business, creating this kind of sales engine that just runs itself. Now, one other thing I noticed about that I really like is the design of your website, artofplay.com. Talk to us about this. Did you hire a designer for this? What went into building this site?
This is actually a theme on your theme shop. I can't remember what the theme is called, but it really stood out to us because it's super clean. It's on white. There's lots of room around each thumbnail, which just makes it, like, to me, kind of like a museum. And we really want our cards to be like individual pieces of art. So that's why this theme in particular stood out to us. And it just has a nice flow to it. It looks great on mobile. It looks great on any platform, actually.
Mm-hmm. And have you made any tweaks to it, or have you experimented with finding ways to improve?
Yeah, we actually use is that what it's called? Hey Carson, Dan?
Yeah, Hey Carson has done a lot of tweaks, actually, to sort of customize it to our needs. I couldn't tell you at this point what all those are, because it's just been a process of improving over. I think we've had this theme for about a year now, but we've sort of made it our own with a service called Hey Carson, which is, on-demand development within like 72 hours, and they're really good.
Yeah, definitely heard good things about them. Do you remember any particular experiments or changes that you made to the site that had a significant boost to either sales or conversions?
It's a good question.
Most of our tweaks to the website are more for aesthetic preference. Mm-hmm. It's just like a lot of the tweaks we've made were because we didn't like the way something looked. So it wasn't necessarily, hey, how could we sell this better? Although maybe that would be smart.
Well, I think you're onto something where if your audience cares about design and that's why they're coming here to buy your products, that should be the main focus, not on how can we put a pop-up up that will generate us more emails or anything like that. I think you're onto a good point, because a lot of times everyone thinks, okay, let me try this experiment that everyone says I should do, that everyone says is going to increase my conversions, and they go down a direction that doesn't necessarily make sense for their target customers. And I think for you guys, because design is so important, you should approach it with how do we improve the aesthetics of the store. And I think that's definitely the right approach.
Yeah. For us, the user experience is key. Like, so often we go to websites and you just feel bombarded by sales tactics, whether it's a pop-up or an upsell or a little window at the bottom, or, even if you try to click the back button, you get another pop-up, which I think we actually use. But there are so many. And I think the point is to choose them carefully and don't use them all, because if you use them all, at least in our opinion, we're going to annoy our customers. Mm-hmm. We would much rather have our customers have an enjoyable, pleasant experience. And maybe they don't purchase with us the first time, but, if they're going to come back, then to us, then they're customers for life. At least we think so. That's our intention. So we really try to give them the best possible experience.
One of the obstacles we're currently trying to overcome is just like, for example, if you go to our amusements collection on the site, it's filled with just really cool things like hand-spun spinning tops, a chess set, a brass Belglieri, these tippy top things, wooden dice. They look great online, but we have this showroom here at our warehouse, and it's not until you come and actually see it and feel it in person that you can truly appreciate it. And I think once that happens, you want it even more. And so trying to transcend that to like a 2D piece of, on the web basically is really difficult for us. We think if we can figure out a way to get that across, sales will be improved significantly. But until then, they're just photos. We promise they're so much cooler in real life.
Yeah, I think that's the ultimate challenge of being online, is that you lose out on the ability to pick up a product and feel it in your hands. I think that's where a lot of the value, especially when it comes to these kind of products, that's where a lot of the value is, feeling the weight of it, feeling how the texture of it and all that. So I think that's a good point. It's definitely a challenge that I think a lot of entrepreneurs face.
Yeah, one of the things I guess we've done to sort of improve that is our lifestyle photos. We really take great effort into showing the product in unique, nice lifestyle settings. Whether it's on a coffee table surrounded by other cool objects, or on a bookshelf, or in someone's hands playing with it. So that's helped significantly.
Awesome. Cool. So again, thanks so much for your time, Dan and Dave. So artofplay.com, artofplay.com. So by the time this episode gets released, actually we'll probably be in the holiday shopping season. So I think your products are priced and look just perfect for gifts. How do you prepare for the holiday shopping season? What do you guys have planned?
Lots of cool stuff. We've just recently started manufacturing our own games and puzzles. So we'll be releasing a couple of those just in time for the holiday season. We have some really cool new decks coming out. We're always coming out with decks, but we always save the best for the end of the year, for the holiday season. And we typically drop everything on Black Friday. Like every year we have an epic release of like 20 new products. I'm not even joking. It's crazy. It's insane. We have a sale. So Art of Play is definitely the place to go for all your holiday gifts, really.
One of the cool things that I'm really excited about, this will be the third year we do it. We call it the 25 Days of Christmas. And if you get on our mailing list, we have this special promotion where every day, I know it sounds crazy, but every day we offer something new, whether it's a brand new release or a rare one-of-a-kind item or a crazy discount or a freebie. So every day for 25 days of December, there's something new, and only people on our newsletter have access to this special offer. So
Awesome. Definitely going to get on that newsletter then. All right. Thank you again so much for your time, Dan and Dave.
Thanks for having us.
Felix, this was great. Thank you.
Here's a sneak peek for what's in store in the next Shopify Masters episode.
Honestly, on a daily basis, I like to have one sample come in to see if I like it personally before I even put it on the shelves.
Thanks for listening to Shopify Masters, the e-commerce marketing podcast for ambitious entrepreneurs. To start your store today, visit shopify.com/masters to claim your extended 30-day free trial. Also, for this episode's show notes, head over to shopify.com/blog.